Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, where we go across country and travel the world with members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. Let's go. Welcome, everybody. Today we are going on a Southwest road trip with Julie Diebolt Price. She is an award-winning professional photographer. She's an author, a travel writer, and educator. She writes about photography and travel, of course. And I think just about every time she's on the show, there's some kind of road trip involved. One time it's Wisconsin. One time it was up in Oregon and also kind of the Shasta area of California. Was it, or it is, it was the Shasta area, not Oregon,
Shasta,
but close.
yeah,
But close.
on the border.
And on the border, but keep up with her at phototravelright.com. And she's got an article about her road trip that I will link to from the show notes. So wherever you're listening from, look at the show notes. We're going to talk about the destinations, but really look at the hotels that she stayed in because they're unique hotels, not your run-of-the-mill hotel whatsoever. And it's always interesting to hear about unique lodgings because those, like bed and breakfasts, are that kind of thing too, where they are part of the experience. So welcome back, Julie. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Great to be here. And I'm very well, thank you.
Well, good, good. You went on a cool road trip. You know, we love the Southwest. We used to be Southwest Blend, and our hearts and souls are still in the Southwest. And you went from, you're based in Phoenix now. That's why I was talking about Oregon, and we're in
hmm
Oregon right now. But you did a trip going from Phoenix through Albuquerque to Golden, Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, Denver, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then back down to through Albuquerque, where you stayed at Hotel Chaco, which I'm excited to hear about because I think we were there just maybe a year or two after because it's a new hotel after
It's
it's been
fairly new,
built,
yeah.
and you got to stay there because
Yes,
that's
I did.
la-di-da. It's cool. Tell people
Yes.
about, let's go backwards a little bit because you did go through Albuquerque first, but yeah, tell us about that hotel because what interests Nancy and I, we've seen the outside of it, but the inside, apparently this is designed to be in the style of Chaco Canyon. Chaco Cultural National Historical Park is really a unique place where you go see these ceremonial sites, which are these perfect circles. It's amazing. So it's supposed to be designed after that, right?
Yes, very much. They sent the architects, or the architects went to Chaco Canyon and studied it extensively. And they built Hotel Chaco with so many aspects and so much reverence for Chaco Canyon. The front door of the hotel is unique because if you stop and think about it, every hotel that you go to has big glass doors as you enter. Well, Hotel Chaco has black doors. It's like black on black. And that's reminiscent of Chaco Canyon and how they built their entryways and the black on black design of their pottery. So it starts right at the front door. When you
Mm,
walk in the entrance hallway, there is a representation of fire. They burn sage twice a day. On the opposite side of the hallway, and it's a small hallway, it's narrow, it's not giant. They have rocks with
hmm
a little trickle of water. It's so minuscule that you can hardly see it, but you can see that it's shiny. And that
mm,
is reminiscent of the preciousness of water in the desert.
hmm
And moving further, if you look up to the ceiling, there is a very graphic, colorful painting. The bricks in Chaco Canyon used to be painted. And so the beams and the ceiling are painted in that style.
mm,
Then when you get into the lobby, there is a statue in the center. but the lobby is round and the walls are made of stacked bricks. And it is the exact size of, I think it's called the Grand Kiva at Chaco Canyon. And there are alcoves up above with artwork, and it's lit so you can see it. And so it's very simple yet elegant. And if you haven't even been there, you get a sense of what it's like at Chaco Canyon.
Mm. No, it's truly true about the Kiva too. It's pretty amazing. And not
Mm,
far from Chaco and Aztec is the Aztec ruins, which is where the Pueblo people actually lived. And
hmm.
then they would go to Chaco for their ceremonies, which was all about celebrating the solstice.
Oh,
So
yes.
we think it's a mysterious place.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows. And there is a water source there. It's also a dark sky park,
Oh, yes. Hmm.
which is really cool. But they're really right about that. And, you just have to go. But I think what's interesting, Nancy and I have seen the hotel from the outside, and we went to the sawmill across the way there, which I love. It's one of the best food halls ever. It's so
Hmm.
cool.
Hmm.
And there's other things in there too, besides food. Um, but the outside reminds me of Chaco, the outside with the way the the rocks are put together. I don't even say
Hmm.
bricks because it was like bricks, but it Chaco is like going to, the ancient ruins. You know,
Right.
you know
They're
what
they're stones. They're uneven. They're um, mixed sizes, but they're stacked so perfectly.
hmm Yeah. So and I love it because, Chaco's not far from Albuquerque. And I like Albuquerque. Did you have a good time there?
Oh, I've been there several times, and yes, I always enjoy going there.
Well, tell me about this flamenco experience you had.
Ah, okay. So the sister hotel next to Hotel Chaco is Hotel Albuquerque, and they are the performance venue, if you will, of Tablao Flamenco. And I had the pleasure of interviewing the woman that started flamenco and brought it to life here in America. She's centered there in Albuquerque, and that's where she grew up. The first question I asked her in the interview was, why did you choose Albuquerque? Well, her family lived there. Her mother was a flamenco teacher. And so Ava learned flamenco from her. And, and I don't know if your listeners know, but flamenco is a UNESCO art form because it's unique and it came from Spain. And they used to call them gypsies. They call them Roma now. And
Yeah.
yeah, so the Roma created it. And if you've ever watched a flamenco performance, it's very emotional and lively and loud. And it's just amazing to see and hear it. So the office is just a block away from Hotel Chaco, and it's in the Sawmill District. And so if you've seen Hotel Chaco, you've actually seen the next door hotel, which is Hotel Albuquerque, where they perform on the
Mm.
flamenco stage. So it's all very interrelated.
And it's like the capital of flamenco in North America, I believe. Like it's
Yes, it
one of the
is.
biggest places for flamenco. And level five restaurant, we didn't do that. We're a little,
Oh,
we're gonna have to catch up on this
oh my gosh. Yeah,
Albuquerque experience here. So
yeah.
that's the restaurant that's inside Hotel Chaco.
Yes, it's on the fifth floor. And it's not called level five because it's on the fifth floor. It's
Hmm.
called level five because that was the top floor at Chaco Canyon.
Hmm.
And I
Oh,
learned
that's
that
right.
you
That's right.
you heard it? Okay.
No, no, go ahead. No,
Oh,
you just reminded me that yes, we didn't do that hike, but that was up there. Yeah, there's like
okay.
a hike I think where you can see that. If I'm maybe I'm wrong. But
Oh,
yeah, yeah. Sorry,
okay.
carry on about that.
So part of what I did on this trip was interview the executive chefs because I'm starting to write do gourmet travel. I write enough about food and wine and cocktails and adult beverages, and so I'm actually designing section on my website called Gourmet Travel. And
Cool.
so, part of my destination research is to interview executive chefs. And so, Chef Mark Quinones, I don't think he's been there quite a year, maybe just a year at level 5. And he has brought it up to exemplary standards because my husband and I were in Albuquerque a couple years ago and ate at level 5, and we were very disappointed. And so I hadn't met Chef Mark, as they call him Chef MQ. I hadn't
Mm,
met him yet nor spoken to him, and I can see all of his hand in the menu and the dinnerware. And he cooks in the style of the ancestors there, like bison, buffalo, um, and the style. He cooks over a grill a lot,
mm.
and very creative combinations. So anyway, he's the one that told me about the naming of level 5.
And tell us a little bit about level 5. So that's the,
Oh,
because as I recall, when we were up there, when we went hiking around, we took a tour, and we were more on the lower elevation, but there was this other hike. And that's what I remember, something about level 5 being up there or something like that. And maybe I'm wrong, but there was this whole other, and we were there in the middle of summer. So it was one of
oh,
those where, like, there's the shaded picnic bench that we're going to. Just saying,
yeah,
but it got down in the 40s and 50s at night in the summer. So that was crazy.
right.
Um, but is that what it was? Like part of the ceremony, one of those ceremonial structures were up at the top there, I think.
Yes,
That's where
yes,
we didn't hike yet. So I want to go
yet.
back.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet
Well,
myself.
I'm telling you, when you go, um, definitely get your maps out, because Nancy and I got lost getting back to Albuquerque and ended up,
Oh,
way far away. And
uh-uh.
let me tell you, in northern New Mexico, don't let your tank go below half a tank. Keep filling up, and
Right.
go to the rest area too. Um, when you
Oh,
see
yeah.
what I'm just saying, but we saw wild horses. They're more like
Oh,
ponies. And we saw, it was the most beautiful drive. I love when that kind of, it's serendipity when you get
yes.
lost, to me.
Right.
And it was so beautiful, and we had such a wonderful time. But we were staying in Gallup, and
Mm,
at the El Rancho. I think it's a very historic inn,
mm,
where all the Western movie film people stayed. And so we were in Gallup, and we ended up having it. I mean, that's how twirled around we got from Chaco. If everyone looks at the map, I still don't know what we did, but we ended up way east of Albuquerque, and Gallup
hmm.
is near Albuquerque, but we went way, 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 way out of the way. But I don't know. Anyway, we got it, but it was beautiful. And I love that they're putting, that the hotel is there to kind of showcase the heritage of the area. And I think that's what's so interesting about New Mexico. Has, they have that hashtag New Mexico True, that campaign.
Yes.
And I think, they really have, as a state, done really well of showcasing and promoting and maintaining the integrity of the people of the state, and
Hmm.
multicultural, ways. Santa
Yes.
Fe is very Spanish too. When you went to Santa Fe,
Hmm.
um, I'm detouring your road trip here,
Oh, that's fine.
going backwards. In Santa Fe, so you went to the Inn and Spa at Loretto, which we haven't done. But did you go to the chapel while you
Oh,
were there?
yes. Oh, yes.
Tell us
So
about that. Yeah.
the okay. The thing is, if you stay at the inn and spa at Loretto, you get a free pass to go into the Loretto Chapel. So you want to make sure to do that. And it's right next door. Um, I could have probably spent all day there because the staircase is this mysterious staircase. I don't know if you've heard about that,
Mm.
but they built in the chapel, they built a balcony. And the nuns didn't have any way to get to the balcony. And so they prayed for someone to give them access. I'm kind of glossing over it.
Mm-hmm.
But this carpenter showed up and built it for them, and he disappeared. He didn't take any money. And it's a mystery because it had no support on any supports on the wall or anything. It just he built it in such a way that it just, you could go up the stairs, this circular staircase. And so that still remains a mystery. Now the chapel have attached it with supports to the wall now because, and you can't go up there because they're preserving it. And, but it's remarkable to
Mm.
actually see this staircase and wondering how it could possibly support itself, let alone people walking up it to get to the balcony. But it's
It's a
this,
miracle. They call it like it's like
the
a
miracle.
miracle. Yeah.
Yes, it is a
We
miracle.
stopped at the church, and we did peek in there, and I think it was part of our we did a walking food tour
Mm,
of Santa Fe, which was absolutely fabulous.
hmm
And so much fun. We were silly. It was fun. They give you margaritas everywhere you go, and it was
Oh,
really fun. I know. It's like, oh yeah, give me a half portion of a margarita. That doesn't work. It was fun. Um, but but yeah, but the Inn and Spa, what was the hotel itself like? Because it's kind of attached and next to it, right?
it's right next door. It's not attached, but it's so close. There's a perfect view of it from the dining room, the Luminaria dining room.
Mm,
The best seats in the house are looking out across the courtyard. There's a big fountain between that and the back of Loretto Chapel. And in good weather, you can actually sit out in the courtyard and they have gorgeous draperies and stuff. It's really beautiful. But the weather has to be warm. When I was there in October, it was too cold to actually be outside and dine outside. But I was fortunate uh, when I was interviewing the executive chef there,
hmm
he made sure I had the best seat in the house just so I could see out in the courtyard, and it was amazing. So I did get a tour of
mm,
the Inn and Spa at Loretto, and
mm.
it's quite historic. It's one of the most photographed buildings in New Mexico.
Oh,
And in the so they were just starting to put up the luminarias, the little bags
oh wow,
with lights
yeah.
in. And I was just too early. They don't turn the lights on there until I think it's Thanksgiving weekend. So I was about 3 weeks too early, and they were up around the edges of each balcony, and it was just it. I could tell it would be gorgeous. So they have rooms and suites for guests, and it's quite a popular place uh, for weddings. They have a big courtyard out in back for good weather. They were
Mm,
just updating or remodeling the pool, and when I say remodeling, it was a complete redo, and they led me out there to see it, and I just didn't take any pictures of that because
mm.
it was not far enough along, but that's going to be gorgeous once they get all the shrubbery in and all the work done on that. Um, they have just off the lobby, they have what's called the living room. And there are tables. You can have cocktails and happy hour. There's a giant bar there with practically every kind of wine and spirits you can imagine. And they have small plates. The reason I actually stopped there and stayed there is because I met the executive chef when I was in Albuquerque 2 years ago. He
Oh, wow.
he transferred to Hotel Albuquerque, and that's when he was working in the Tablao Flamenco, and I said, I want to interview you. And then he got promoted to executive chef at the Inn and Spa in Santa Fe. And so I don't want to say I'm stalking him, but I followed his career and and had the pleasure of sitting down with him and talking about his career and his goals and his legacy and the things that he cooks. And it was a fabulous experience. So anyway, I had a tasting menu while I was there in the Luminaria. And some of the small plates he also serves in the living room. And it's just a fun place. It's got couches. It's got a skull with giant horns of a longhorn,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
not a
they do
sheep,
have
a cow,
yeah, the cattle. Yeah. No, they
cattle.
do have them out there, believe it or not. They do have I've seen longhorns up in northern New Mexico.
Ah,
You're in central, but I've seen them out there out in the ranges, like
oh
near Fort
yeah.
Union, actually, which isn't too far off. It's all part of the
Oh,
Santa Fe Trail, actually, which is right
mm,
where you were. You're right off the Santa Fe Trail, right? That's what's interesting. You're in Route 66. When you were in Albuquerque, you were not far from Route 66, where you
mhm,
were at Hotel Chaco, and the same thing at the Loretto Inn and Spa. You're right off of Route 66, plus the
mhm.
Santa Fe Trail, both of them, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, the Inn and Spa at Loretto is on old Santa Fe Trail Street or road or whatever. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's
So
yeah,
on it. It's
yeah.
on it. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
so cool to have that history. Now, while you were there, did you got to go to Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, right?
Yes, that was one of the
Cool.
absolute things that I had to do. And being a photographer, I studied her some, not a whole lot, but that woman was so talented, not only in photography, but in art and just her style.
I
Just an
agree.
amazing woman.
You know what? I didn't, that museum does a good job on her, um, on what her life and legacy and her art and how open-minded she was. She was
Yeah.
very open and explain, listen, her flowers are not all about the female parts. I'm just saying. She was
Hmm.
into bones. She was into so many things. And one thing I thought was wasn't her boyfriend a photographer, right?
Yes, he
Um,
was.
and the one thing I thought was so great is they, not just talks about her legacy, obviously in Abiquiu and all of that too. She's, prominent out there, but they talked
Hmm.
about, where she lived. But they talked about her life in New York City. We forget about that,
Right.
what she did, as a young woman in New York City. She, she's done a little bit of everything, and she did travel quite a bit too, from what I
Hmm.
gathered from the museum. But she has far more than flowers. She is not
Oh, yes.
his that that's so important to bring out. And what my hard thing was, I wanted to photograph everything in the museum, and you're not allowed to unless it's just for like personal stuff and social media stuff. But you know what I mean? It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
very, you want to photograph everything. But Santa Fe, by the way, travel writers, make sure you don't, like the Palace of Governors and stuff, don't just start photographing people without asking permission of the people. There's
Hmm.
a respect thing that happens in Santa Fe and is important. San Miguel Church, this is iconic too. You got to go there.
Yes. It's like a block away from the Inn and Spa at Loretto. And it's a remarkable, active, still active church, but there's a bell in there, a giant bell, and it's hard to know if it's from 1300 or 1800. And we think it's 1800, but the 8 looks kind of like a 3 that's melded into it. But what's unique about this church, they still have services there, but in the floors, in several places cut out of the floor, they have lights, and it's covered with glass, so you can look into the holes and see steps that the ancients used like in 1300.
That's amazing.
It's
That's
truly
amazing.
amazing.
Santa Fe is the history is insane. It is very multicultural.
Yes.
European, Spanish, Mexican, Native American, it's just vibrant that way. And there's a lot of respecting of each other there too. And
yes.
And it's just when you talk about that kind of, I mean, I think the oldest hotel is there too. The actual oldest inn. And then you've got Harvey House things. You've got Los Alamos around the corner where, the atomic bombs were being made.
Right.
I mean, Bandelier, not far, right? Either. So that's also very cool. National monument. So, it's a special place. Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Gallup, that whole area just has this vibe of like, woo, something went down. And no, not something, a whole bunch of stuff went down.
Yeah.
So, Fremont and Kit Carson went through there. And I mean, Santa Fe Trail to me is huge. That's one of the most important things.
And I find myself keeping going back to that area.
Yeah.
And of course, Albuquerque with the hot air balloon fiesta. When I was there last year, the weather was terrible, and you can never count on perfect weather to have the balloons fly. And I don't mean last year in 2023. I mean when I was there in 2022. And every time I go to Albuquerque, there's always something to see, something new, something old. There's a lot of entertainment for families and solo travelers and history and new stuff. So, yeah,
I love that you bring that up because the hot air balloons, things happen. I mean, and if you're like Nancy and I, we go around looking for wildlife. You can go to the most prominent places in the country and get there, and like, too bad for you today. But there's always something. You just got to keep your eyes open. But Albuquerque, there is. I mean, you can at least go to the hot air balloon museum. I believe they have a museum there. We haven't done that yet. There's a turquoise museum. There's a ton of museums in Santa Fe. The folk art museum to me was one of my favorites in Santa Fe. The folk art museum, because it takes you. It's all this cultural art from around the world. And it was just like, can I just stay here all day long? And because that to me is just one of those museums, I think. And then also the Capitol building itself is a art gallery with, representing, I think like 300, I think it's 600 pieces of art and 300 artists from the area represented. I'm going to be wrong somewhere on that, but the public art in Albuquerque is insane. The public art trail. I mean, you could go around. We tried, and there's no way. There's just so much art.
Yeah.
That's a good thing on road trips, though. Public art, don't you think? It kind of like sometimes you don't get to stay in a place as long as you want to, but the public art gives you the experience of things that you may not, that you're going to want to experience later, or maybe at least gives you insight to the history.
Right. But I have already made my hotel reservations for the Indian market this coming August.
Wonderful. That's
Have you
exciting.
been there? Have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
We have not attended the event. No, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
It's a big deal. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So now we're going to move on to Denver. We are doing your road trip backwards.
That's fine.
Hey, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Everybody and everyone, again, the link, if you go to Julie's website, again, it's phototravelright.com. The link directly to her section, this, as articles get published across the country in different outlets, you'll see them pop up on this section. So archive it. I mean, you can see, her whole route and everything on there. But let's go to Denver. Denver is very iconic, but you got to go to the Maven Hotel. You went to the Union Station. See, train stations are always good, right? That's
Yeah.
a huge deal. The Milk Market, that's another food hall. So you went from the milk market to the sawmill. So this is great. So what's their food hall like?
Okay. It was I don't want to say the first time because I've been to the sawmill a couple of times, but the milk market, well, let's step out a little bit. The dairy block, that's what we have to talk about first,
Okay.
because this whole block used to be the dairy industry for the area. And now it is the most eclectic, popular, interesting block that I've ever been to.
Whoa.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I was only in Denver for like one overnight because on this road trip, I needed to beat the snow. The snow
Hmm.
was coming and I was late in the season. So I
I have
had
no idea what you're talking about. Just kidding, after what we did in Oregon. But
I
yeah,
know.
carry on. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Um, so, um,
But
so
yeah, every place is quick. I understand that. But I think that's what's interesting about your itinerary. You still managed to do something, even if you were there. It's like, here's your one overnight. But if you
right.
can get to a place like the Dairy Block, then you can do
Yeah,
something
you
immediately.
can eat and drink and stay all in one building. So, um, I was there at the end of the season and I wanted to do a ride in a rickshaw because they
Oh,
take you
cool.
around to the public art, the murals, and I'm into murals and I'm into public
Oh, me
art,
too.
and I was the only one registered for that day, and so of course they couldn't run that tour. And there was another tour, I can't remember what I was booked for, but also the same thing. That I was the only one. And so if you're going to go to a destination like this, best not to go at the tail end of the season if you want to do some of the
Okay.
the tours. And so but I was totally entertained in the dairy block, and they have public art inside the building, around in the alleyways, flowers and murals. And they change out the murals periodically. So it's constantly changing. And they have a fabulous place where you can stand under the quote unquote artwork of milk pouring out of a milk can, which I
Mm.
did. And it's like it's falling on my head. So great places for selfies. And so that's the dairy block. Also, there's art there's musical art where you turn these wheels and the symphony plays, and it's the local symphony that's recorded it, and it's like a gramophone and you turn it and it plays. So a lot of interactive stuff.
Cool.
So the Maven is a hotel. They call it upscale, but um it's not upscale like I had in the luxury hotels in Boulder and Golden. This is more for millennials, where
Hmm.
it's minimalistic, and the balcony, I'm sorry, I didn't go out on the balcony. I stuck one foot out so I could take a picture. But
She's like, it's cold.
but the balcony there are no supports under it, and there are all these little balconies on the side of this building, and I was on the fourth floor. Of course, they give you the best room in the house when you're traveling like this. And so anyway, uh, it's very convenient. There are restaurants down below. There are big tables, like library tables in the lobby, and there's artwork in the lobby. And people come there to work. They're all on their computers. It's like a workspace. And then up above in the other, like in the center of the building, it's an office building. And so you come in the lobby and you take the elevator up to your office or whatever upstairs. On the opposite side of the building is the milk market. And that is the food hall where there's a stall for upscale wines. There's, I think I finally picked the fish and chips place. There's a barber shop in there, the old fashioned kind with that blue and red stripe thing that goes around. There is a tiny Michelin 1-star. They just got their Michelin star restaurant in there. It is so small, you have to make reservations far in advance. And I got to speak to the owner, and just delightful people. And so anyway, you go to these food stalls, you order your food, and then you take it to a table spread throughout. So you're not sitting inside of a restaurant, you're sitting in the food hall. And it's open and very interesting, and lots of different foods.
Wow. I'm we haven't spent time in Denver yet, Nancy and I, but I mean,
Oh,
for listeners and everybody, this has got to be like a really cool experience, you
oh, it
know?
is. It is. And it's just a short walk, maybe 2 or 3 blocks to Union Station.
I
So
like that.
if you take the train to Denver,
Mm.
it's very historic. There's restaurants and bars, and of course, reserved
Wow.
seating in the lobby for travelers. It's historic, and they
I
try to
love it.
preserve the history. And there's a hotel there. I can't remember right now what the name of it is, but um,
Cool.
there's so much history.
I like it when you're on a road trip, you're doing your driving, and then once you park the car, don't make me get back in. Like
Oh
that's
yeah,
how I feel. I don't want to have to play DoorDash either. No offense to DoorDash. I want just, of course there's Ubers and everything, but it's just nice to be able to get your stuff in, kind of refresh, maybe have a glass of wine
of
first.
course.
And then, and then you go, okay, I'm ready for the world. Let's go, on the fourth, fifth wind and go for it and go see what you can experience, but also not have to feel like you have to drive or I understand call the Uber and everything, but I just like to be able to walk from the
Yes.
hotel to wherever I'm going. I
Mhm.
love that. I mean, not everywhere can do that, and that's fine. And I love those places too, but it just went on a road trip. You don't want back in a vehicle. I don't.
Exactly.
I want out.
Hmm.
I want to see the murals. I want to walk. My body needs it.
Hmm.
It's like you've been cramped up. I don't care how big your car is. It's still crampy. I don't care if you're on the train. You need to walk. You've been sitting. So get
Right.
out, walk, stretch your legs and have a drink, have some food, then walk it off. You know what I mean? So it
Hmm.
feels good,
Hmm.
and it's just fun. So that you've given me a whole different perspective of Denver than what we've ever covered. I love it. I'm so excited to hear about this.
Oh, good.
I want, yeah, no, it's super cool. I want to go up to Boulder.
Okay.
Boulder. Oh, Boulder is so cool. We haven't been able to spend a lot of time in Boulder, but it's laid back, hippy dippy. No, I shouldn't say that hippy dippy, right? It isn't. Is it? Is it, do you
Well,
think?
it's known for their liberal point of view.
I shouldn't say hippie. Am I going to get in trouble for saying hippy dippy? I mean that in a
No,
good way. My mom is
no.
a hippie, so I've got a hippie heart. I just don't wear flowers that often,
Well, I'll tell
but
you,
I
it
mean
did
it.
remind me of Portland, Oregon,
Ah,
with the
okay, yeah.
style of clothing and hair and that. And they're,
I think it's nice. I
yeah.
like it.
And
I
they've
think.
got a reputation for being very liberal, except that they were a dry city for 60 years.
Dude,
So let me explain. The Hotel Boulderado is, I think, celebrating 120 years this year. In
wow.
19, 1909, January 1st, they opened and they were supposed to do a champagne toast, as was the
Mm-hmm.
tradition for opening hotels. Well, there was no champagne because you couldn't get it. There were no bars. It was a dry town and it
Wow.
stayed dry for 60 years. And so in their recent history, they're, of course, I don't think they have blue laws anymore, but it's quite a dichotomy if they were dry and didn't allow drinking in the town for all those years, yet now they have a very liberal reputation. It's really kind of funny.
Wow. So, but yeah, I mean, because I think they were the ones who started off with weed, right? Didn't they start? They were the first legal weed.
Oh, I
Was
don't
it?
know.
It was either Boulder or Breckenridge. I don't want to get it
Oh,
wrong.
yeah.
Well,
I
now,
didn't
now
hear
you,
that.
every time I go through Colorado, I remember the first time, like after everything was legal,
Oh,
and you hear all
that's
the
right.
ads and you see all the billboards for pot, and they're
Yes.
hysterical. I mean, the ads and everything. Now we see it everywhere in the country, but it was so new and different. And it's like, here's the happy camper. I remember that. And Nancy and I are like, that's funny,
Yeah.
so it's like whatever floats your boat. I'm not against any of it. I just want
Mm-hmm.
everybody to be happy, and I think they
Yeah.
are. So but I now I'm having to say who was the first legal weed place in the country, but it was legal years ago.
It was in Colorado. Now that you mention, I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna see. I know who was the first. Okay, it was first used in the. Okay, don't get me all started on now. Now my Google history is going to be full of weed. That's
Uh-oh.
okay. It's all right. Go, sue me. But this is interesting about that. So you get we did this in not Hot Springs, excuse me, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hmm.
We went to little it's at Rocktown Distillery. They are not that old, and they were the first distillery in the state of Arkansas
Mm.
after Prohibition.
Mm.
I mean, it was, I think if they were 10 years old, I mean, it was a corporate dude who said, I'm sick of corporate life and decided I'm opening a distillery. And I'm like, I'm with you. And I remember it was like the spur of a moment. We went into, I mean, you have to go to the distillery, especially with
Of
that history.
course.
We walk in, and next thing you know, we're doing an interview and he's giving us all these tastes. And halfway through, I couldn't even speak. I'm like, what? We're doing on-site recording. I'm like, what am I drinking? He's like, gin, vodka. I don't know what it is anymore. I'm happy. It tasted good. It was fun. And, but what was interesting, he battled to become the first distillery. I mean,
Well,
it was like legal. I mean, when you talk about red tape, what wineries go through, restaurants go through, liquor licensing, that is
yeah.
crazy stuff to go through. And then
Right.
he decided, well, I want to serve cocktails because he does bourbon or not. I shouldn't say it. He does whiskey, vodka, gin, whatever he can distill, he
Mm-hmm.
will. And he had to go back through the whole system again, which could also threaten being a distillery to be able to serve cocktails. But he won. And so he does it, and it's cool.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
everyone should go there. I like going to distilleries because I think it's part of American history.
It
It
is.
really is.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you went there, and but this is a liquor license, and I mean that's crazy. But now, okay, Hotel Boulderado, is that like downtown downtown? Like what was that like?
Yes. It's in the historic downtown area, and it's like a couple blocks, probably north or east of the pedestrian mall there.
Hmm.
And it's on a main corner, and you can imagine the horse and buggies going around the corner and stuff. And it's near the Boulder Theater. And I was in a fourth floor corner suite, and at night I could see, they lit up the um, Boulder Theater, and that was my nighttime view out the window. And of course, I'm kind of one of these people that sits on the windowsill and looks out and look at the world going by. But the mornings there, the dawn was remarkable. The sky would light up from the bottom, orange and pink, and
Mm.
I loved that part of it. But
Photographer Haven.
oh yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I had a suite. So it was on the corner on the fourth floor. And this property has a stained glass ceiling in the lobby. And it's gone through some iterations, and I thought it was open to the sky. Well, it's not. And I've written all about that in one of the articles that
Mm.
are linked on my website. So that's very historic. The Spruce Farm and Fish, that is the original restaurant, and there's an addition on the outside of it. So you can see the original bricks. That's where I ate my dinner. And so they've enclosed that to make that a little bit bigger, but it's the original flooring, the original stained glass door, and they really are preserving history. They have a historian there. She's worked there for 40 years, and they have all sort of memorabilia in the lobby and in alcoves all over the place. The second floor, visitors can just go up and tour the second floor. They have photographs of original buildings and the building and the street and that. So it's
Mm.
very convenient. It's actually in a residential neighborhood on the corner of the built up industry. So it's in a unique place and it feels very warm and welcoming and comfortable. And just a couple blocks away, you can walk on the pedestrian mall, which is several blocks long. And they have all sorts of shops and public art and playground areas for kids. And oh, some of the best Spanish tapas that I've ever had. Of course, I haven't had that much, but I ate at Corrida, which is a restaurant there, and I went specifically to try the happy hour, and they serve small plates, Spanish
Mm.
tapas, and the view from it's the fourth floor. The view, you can sit outside with under umbrellas. The weather was incredibly perfect when I was there. The leaves on all the trees were golden and red, burnished colors. And uh, they also had just installed for the season their globes. They put them up in time for Parents' Weekend for the college there. And
Oh, cool.
they're globes that are little houses
Hmm.
that seat up to six people, four people comfortably, but you could squeeze six in there. And so you can dine outside in the colder days and during the winter and still be outside and see the scenery. And it overlooks the Flatirons.
Mm.
Those are the rock formations of course, it's part of the Rockies, but it's I'll say a small mountain range, and they're flat. And they're called the Flatirons because the pioneer women said they looked like the flat irons that they used to iron their clothes. So that's how the Flatirons got their name in when the pioneers came out.
So what I wanted to ask you, so I mean, what's interesting about this trip, it seems that you have these really architecturally interesting areas, whether it's new or older architecture,
Mhm.
along with scenery and then really good food to photograph. So as a photographer, it seems like these experiences, I mean, and the public art is always fun to photograph, right? It's like
Mhm.
art on art, you know?
Right.
So this had to be kind of a joyride for you.
I love a road trip, and every single road trip includes luxury lodging where I can, when I can, um, extremely fine food and wine pairings. and the scenery. And I also consider public art
Ooh,
because
yeah.
when I work with my PR companies or my destination marketing organizations, some of the things that are always on my list, public art, parks, outdoors, and food and beverage and luxury lodging. So I can tell a complete story. So if someone goes on this road trip, they'll have a little bit of everything.
So the one thing too, that's something like I think a good thing because we're on a show with the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association is that's part of it too. They help you kind of set up these trips, as have you been on an IFWTWA press trip before
I
as a
have
member?
not. I have not.
Not yet. Not
Mm-mm.
yet. You never
No.
know. You
Well,
never know.
I've applied to some, but I really prefer doing an individualized road trip or a trip
Mm.
on my own. Um, I just feel I can go at my own pace.
Yeah. A lot of writers are like that. It's like in photographers, like I want my own, but I think they're great on getting communication, like having connections. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's one of the things with IFTWA. It's like you can either go on a group press trip, um, or go solo. I'm a kind of solo person because I mean if you're a road tripper, like you got to do it according to what you're doing, and getting
Right.
all the things in you want to go on. I don't want to leave without talking about Golden,
Okay.
because that seems like that you had a lot of good times there, and you went to Table Mountain Inn, and Table Mountain to me, as soon as I hear Table Mountain, I think of South Africa where I used to live in Cape Town, and but every country has Table Mountains, and Table
Oh,
Mountains are mind blowing because it is. You look at it going like you could just go put a tablecloth on and sit
exactly.
down and eat if you were a giant, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
amazing.
Golden was my first introduction. I don't want to say my first time in Colorado, but it was my introduction to this area of Colorado. And of course, the weather couldn't have been better. It was absolutely gorgeous. And the room or I was in a suite and it overlooked Table Mountain. Well, and Coors, they're in a little valley at the bottom of Table Mountain, and it's like a giant billboard. So you can't help but understand that Coors is very notable there. And the Table Mountain Grill, I did interview the chef there as well. And very interesting career and his goals for the restaurant. And because I'm also doing an article on other places to eat in these destinations. So I also visited the Sherpa House, which is more than just a restaurant. It is like a museum and an information center where you can learn about Nepal and see the gorgeous architecture um and I when I go to restaurants like that are outside of the norm that I usually eat, I like to try their signature dish or something that I would not normally have.
Mm.
And I ordered yak it was like a yak stew.
Oh, wow.
And and I think someday I'd like to go to Mongolia, but I don't know if I could drink the yak milk or do that. Well, yak tasted had a texture between pork and beef, and the taste was similar to a very light beef and or
Hmm.
pork. So I really enjoyed that. Um, Golden Mill is a food hall,
Oh, another one. Cool.
another one, but what's unique about this place, well, of course, it started out as a gin mill, a mill for grain, you grinding the grain
Hmm.
in their history. And what they have, and I'd never seen it anywhere before, is they have taps for beer on the wall, and you check in at the front desk, you give them your credit card, and they give you a card, and you pour your own beer or sake or wine. You just pull on the tap and you measure it in ounces. And that's a blast because how many times have you gone to a bar? If you order beer and you order it on
Hmm.
draft and they're always pulling on those taps. I've always wanted to do that. So at this place, you can. They have bartenders there to help you with the first one, but I was eating Japanese food, so I had to have sake. And you got to be careful because the liquid comes out pretty fast. But it was good. That was fun. Also in Golden, they have a lot of historical sites. The Colorado Railroad Museum, they actually
Cool.
have an old um, steam engine, and they give people rides around the complex. It's like a couple blocks. And so uh, that's fun. I didn't go on the ride, but I did go to that museum. And the Colorado School of Mines, you would think there'd be just like miners there, but I guess they have a really great football team, which I learned from the executive chef at the Table Mountain Inn. So that's a big deal there. And Lookout Mountain, I am afraid of heights. And even
Hmm.
in a car on this 2-lane narrow road, I got almost to the top of Lookout Mountain, but they were hang glide and they hang glide all over town. But because they're up on that mountain, it's like they're soaring like eagles over the whole mountain. And that was so interesting to watch. I would never do it, but um, it was interesting watching the people.
That's
And
cool though.
one other term that I learned when I was there, I heard people talking about the Front Range. And
Mhm.
so, of course, I asked, what's the Front Range? Well, that's where the plains meet the Rockies. So the Front Range is where the ground slopes up and goes into the Rocky Mountains. I think that was probably interesting. So,
Yeah, no, I think that is cool. It is, well, it's really interesting about how, that plateau happens, when you think
hmm
about the Rocky Mountains coming through, and then they have the Colorado Plateau, Colorado River Plateau, and kind of all
hmm
moves together, and then you've got the plains like you're talking about, which
yeah,
is really interesting. I mean, you forget that Colorado has the plains, and they do have buffalo, I should say bison out there, excuse me, and
hmm
pronghorn. We've been through a lot of that area, which is really fascinating. But I would say let people know Table Mountain Inn, that's a place to stay when you go
yes,
there. Yeah,
yes.
definitely. So you had a good road trip. I do want to tell everyone I did research it. Boulder, Colorado had the first marijuana dispensary in the country. There we go. In
Oh
three
my
different
gosh.
places. Boulder, I had to. I had to look it up and let people know, you
Uh-huh.
know. But this is the thing too. And just because it may be legal doesn't mean you can smoke it in your hotel room. The smoking laws apply when you're traveling and lodgings. I've read so many articles about hoteliers getting so mad, like, please don't smoke it in my room. Like you're
Right.
ruining my room. So it's just a thing to think of, because you've been in hotels where you can smell it. You can smell it in parking lots,
Oh,
people in their
yes.
cars.
hmm
Nancy and I recently were on a road trip in this one town that we hadn't been to out in the Southwest, Needles, California, everybody. Didn't have all these dispensaries, but literally this town became a hub of dispensaries all around Colorado River and across the border into Arizona. I don't know, but there was
Hmm.
one dispensary after the other. We finally got onto the highway and I looked at Nancy and went, oh my God, the car smells like weed. We smell like weed. And you know what she's doing? She's giggling. I'm like, do you have a contact high from driving around these dispensaries? Like, what is going on? They're going to pull us over. We're going to get in trouble. And she just thinks this is the happiest thing. She's like, this is the best part of the trip. And I'm like, well, apparently you're having a trip. I don't know. But it's really funny as travelers, and and travel writers are now going on, cannabis tasting trips. So
Oh,
I don't,
yes.
I haven't done that yet, but if
I
I
haven't
do,
either.
you're going to hear a lot of giggles from me. I know that fact.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. So, but it's an interesting time, with, being on the road and traveling. But everyone, again, go to phototravelright.com. Of course, you go to IFWTWA.org as well, IFWTWA.org for the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association. We love doing our shows with them because we always get to go on these amazing destinations, whether they're around the world or across the country, like Julie's doing. So always fun. But thank you. It's so good to hear from you again, Julie.
And thank you, Lisa. It's been great. I love talking to you. Everything always comes out so naturally when I talk to you about my travels.
Yeah, well, you have a good time on your travels. That's right. I mean, I know. Look at these road tripping, right? It's
Road
fun.
tripping.
We're all
Absolutely.
part of the travel. Well, thank